The first one up is a representative of GeoAir from Mexico, General Director, Mr. Wolfgang Kost. Please.
My part as well, y bienvenidos a todos. My name is Wolfgang Kost. I didn't understand what the gentleman told about me, if he did say anything. So I just, oh, you did? Okay, I'm working for GeoAir. It's a private Mexican company. And we are a micro company being active in aerial surveys business. We have 12 of people, 12 people as employees. And the company was founded 20 years ago. And we work in Mexico, Central America, of course, northern part of South America, and the Caribbean. I did not choose really the topic of my presentation today, so let me just make a comment. It says aerial service in Central America. Central America is a administrative division in a way, so Mexico actually belongs to North America and not Central America, or the southern part, the Yucatan Peninsula, belongs to Central America. The line goes where the Istmo de Tehuantepec is located. And I will talk about Mexico and all the way down to Panama. So I divided my presentation into two parts. One is handling the government institutions, and the other part is what the private companies like us are doing in the aerial survey sector. I think with this we have everything covered. And now we come to the users of the data. Who is going to use the geodata in general form? I mean, that's not much new to you. We have government institutions and private institutions. I chose a few ones from Mexico, like the CFE. People who are from Mexico know, of course, is the Comisión Federal de Electricidad, the SCT, the Communication and Transportation Secretaría. They are responsible for all infrastructure planning, and of course the INEGI, the Instituto Nacional de Estadística, Geografía e Informática. They are responsible for the whole national mapping, all scales, from small scale to large scale. They administer all geo-information apart from statistics and economic data. CONAGUA is handling the water supplies and the distribution. Though all these institutions are government institutions, and then we have, on the other hand, the private sector, which I chose three names. ArcelorMittal, I think, is known in the world. It's the largest steel producing company in the world now, coming from India, and they have invested in Mexico in Lázaro Cárdenas, Grupo Mexico, Goldcorp companies that are active in the mining sector. And of course, Mexico is a big mining country, and lots of capital from outside comes into Mexico and into the mining sector. Coming up, more and more important as a user and service provider is the internet, the big players, global players like Google Earth. I mean, everybody uses now Google Earth today, Google Street View, Bing Maps, which just, as Gottfried Konechny mentioned already, changed the ownership to Uber. And important also is Apple Maps. You might know those. Or Apple is also a big player, and we have seen outside nice photos from Airbus, among others from Teotihuacan, the pyramids. And if you go to Apple Map and click on 3D, then you can see the pyramids of Teotihuacan or Chichen Itza, Tulum, also in 3D. Move around, it looks quite impressive because, I mean, you have the third dimension of the pyramids, which looks really nice. Then we have institutions like Telmex, I think in Mexico well known. Carlos Slim, as the richest man in this world at this moment, is the owner of Telmex. And ICA is a big Mexican construction company, the biggest, the largest, and well known. The use of the aerial data collection is also, I mean, standard like everywhere else. We have maps in different scales, small scales, medium scales, large scales, different methods to do that. Topographic maps, thematic maps, all the line, cadastre, road, mines, infrastructure, whatever, thematic maps, DTMs, mainly coming from LiDAR data nowadays, or radar for profiling, mass calculations, and also we have the mapping of the political and administrative boundaries, municipalities, cities, ministries. Here you can see a few samples of different layers like the DTM, DSM, topographic map, and the thematic layers of streets and other information. And here we have an example of cadastral map as an application and a 3D demonstration. As I mentioned before, we have different methods to collect these georeference data. The most common ones are radar, which is a highly specialized data collection method. The most common one is digital cameras, aerial cameras with different bands, multispectral, LiDAR collection, aerogeophysical data collection, and of course others, which also are important in the military sector. Here you get some graphic display of satellite image, aerial photo, of course ground methods for construction areas with high precision requirements, still with GPS or total stations, and the main sensors are here on displayed as radar, LiDAR, or camera sensors. In this case, it's a Vexel Ultracam D seen from down below, the 4 panchromatic lenses, and then red, green, blue, and infrared. And we come now to the National Geographic Institutes of all countries. I will just make quick remarks about each country, summing up how the situation looks. We have first Guatemala, the Instituto Geográfico Nacional Alfredo Gómez. This is a very traditional institute. It was formerly called IGM, Instituto Geográfico Militar. They had some aircraft and cameras in the past. In the meantime, they gave up all the flying by themselves and contracted out. They still do the mapping. They have different softwares for satellite image interpretation and also for aerial images for stereo mapping capacity. Worthwhile to mention is, especially seen from a private company like us, questions like formalities in each country are quite different and sometimes extremely difficult. So we have to get for each country a flight permit. In case of Guatemala, it is not so easy. There is one local company available, which is called Aerofoto. They are giving up these days, it seems. They try to sell their equipment. Maybe this influences also the political issue of issuing flight permits for companies that come, for example, from Mexico, like us. And so they make it extremely difficult for us to fly there at all. Not impossible, especially if international institutions are funding it, like World Bank or IDB, GIZ or JICA, then they open up and make it more accessible. Belize, not part of Latin America, if you want, formerly British Honduras. They don't have a big institution. They have a geographic information system, which is more department, and run their geographic information through this department. They don't have their own aerial survey companies working there. They contract it out if they need something. Formal procedures are not complicated. They are quite cooperative and make it not too difficult to get a flight permit. In El Salvador, also a very small country in Central America, the geodata are run by the CNR, the Centro Nacional de Registros. They have their own aircraft, the Cessna 310, and their own sensor. It's an older Leica RC30, still analog camera. But it seems they don't use it anymore. We had some requests, or we asked them a few years ago, because our aircraft were all busy, and then the aircraft was not in flying condition, and I think the analog camera also is a bit out of date. In Honduras, a similar situation. In the past, they did have a flying equipment. They had cameras and they had aircraft. Not anymore. They contract out every or all aerial survey projects. The institute still has a mapping capacity, but they cannot acquire the primary data. So companies like us go there and ask for flight permit. In this case, it's also quite complicated and expensive even. A flight permit for Honduras for whatever project costs about $6,000. So for small projects, this is quite a burden. And it takes like a month to pass all the formalities. Once in the country, it's not so problematic to fly. Fuel is available in 3 airports, so the country is also not so big. It's quite easy to get around. Nicaragua is a bit different. Capacities for flying what they had in the past, no more. INETER, el Instituto Nicaragüense de Estudios Territoriales, has big mapping capacities, ground survey crews. They do monitoring of earthquakes and their volcanoes. They are quite active in this respect. But again, no primary data acquisition. They contract it out. Flight permit is a formal procedure, possible about $1,000 for each permit, and it takes about 3 weeks to get it. Difficult situation is the fuel problematic. Many times the country has no fuel, no Afgas fuel, not even in Managua. That happened a few times. Then one has to fly to Costa Rica or Honduras to refuel, which makes operations quite complicated because it's always an international flight. Now, you probably have all heard about this new canal they are planning. Not too much had been happening so far. A Canadian company tried to fly LiDAR over the new projected canal area, and some of you might heard that the plane crashed. A young pilot died, sorry. And so at this moment, no more production. In Costa Rica, the Instituto Geográfico Nacional joined in with the Registro Nacional, so they formed one institution running all the georeference data. They have no local or they have no official flying capacity, no aircraft, no cameras. They contract it out. Usually there is one local operator which started recently. Actually, it's a sort of a subsidiary of a Spanish company, Stereocarto. They put one aircraft into the country to fly a cadastral project. And this local operator of Costa Rica, Aerodiva, might continue with the sensor of Stereocarto. Flight permit in Costa Rica is no big issue. It takes about 2 weeks' time, and the costs are minimum. They are quite cooperative, and that makes it easy to do the flying even over San Jose. Let's come to Panama now, to the Instituto Geográfico Nacional, Tommy Guardia. There are 2 persons from the institute here. Bienvenidos. And Tommy Guardia still has 1 aircraft, Cessna 310, modified for aerial surveys. The camera they have is a small format Rolei, which does not work as they wanted it to work. So usually the Instituto also contracts out projects for data acquisition, like the other countries do it. And they have, on the other hand, mapping capacity, stereo mapping capacity with CI software. The formalities for flight permit are not too complicated. It's time consuming, like 3 weeks, and the costs are sort of $2,000 for each permit. And we come now to Mexico, the biggest country. The institution running all the geodata is the INEGI, the Instituto Nacional de Estadística y Geografía. Now they don't talk about informática. Al final, they call themselves only Instituto Nacional de Estadística y Geografía. It's a huge, they have a huge office in Aguascalientes, in the central part of Mexico. A few thousand employees. They run all the geo information and also statistical data, economic data. And the INEGI was founded as such in 1983, before it was called CETENAL y DETENAL. And ever since 1983, they had their own air operation. They had 5 aircraft, among others 2 Conquest, 2 Learjets, and Cessna 310. They had analog cameras from Zeiss, Jena, LMKs 2000, so they were well equipped. And they gave up their operation in the year.
И в 2012 году они занялись уже реальной работой, используя все это оборудование. Уже никакого...
Process satellite images and contract out if they need aerial photography. I think it was a political decision to give up on these flying activities. The problem is basically for governmental institutions, it is simply hardly anywhere in the world they are too efficient. The costs are very high. The outcome is not as it should be. And aerial surveys as such are extremely expensive. The investment in sensors are very high. And so actually the decision to give up on this and contract it out to private companies is maybe not a bad one, apart from the fact that it's convenient for us, so we are busy. I mean, all private companies, of course. But I think from the government point of view, it makes sense. You can see the main building in Aguascalientes, it is constructed in form of a pyramid. As far as the formalities are concerned, INEGI or Mexico is a difficult country to fly, even for us as a Mexican company. INEGI produced like 25 pages of procedures and form sheets and so on in order to give a permit to a private company. The whole procedure takes like 6 weeks. INEGI needs a lot of information about a flight. Then INEGI passes this information on to the to SEDENA, Secretaría de Defensa Nacional. The military people, they have to give permission for a certain flight. Then the same request goes to the state where the aerial survey flight takes place. The state has to approve also this flight. Then it comes all back to the INEGI, and the INEGI gives us a permit. Really complicated it becomes when we talk about Mexico City. Mexico City is the busiest airport south of the Rio Grande. And they have operations every minute. Incoming, outgoing traffic to fly over the capital is extremely complicated. We have to do more paperwork, get also permission from the civil aviation, from the air traffic control guys. We have to have meetings, never ending, and discussions going on and on, how to get our aircraft into their traffic flow, which is definitely a very complicated task, extremely complicated with this traffic. And above all, many times our flying altitude is defined by the client, and so we have not many options to fly higher or lower to avoid the traffic. And we have to work us around their flight levels. If we come to the private companies, apart from Costa Rica and Guatemala, there's Mexico, and Mexico has 9 aerial survey companies that operate aircraft. This sounds quite a bit, but if you see the capacity for a country with nearly 2 million square kilometers of surface area, it is a moderate capacity. We have the company SIGSA. They operate 3 aircraft. You can see them on the display, a Cessna 3310, a 310, and a Piper Aztec. They are, in volume, probably the biggest aerial survey company in Mexico in the overall volume. With the mapping, they are representative of ESRI, so they have lots of income from this part. And strange enough, even with that financial capacity, they bought the last 3 analog cameras of Leica, the RC30. And apart from the still analog cameras, they operate a few medium format digital cameras like Canon and Nikon. Cato Data in Guadalajara also has 3 aircraft, 1 twin engine and a Cessna 207, Cessna 206. It's a traditional company, now in the 3rd generation. They own, apart from GeoAir, the most advanced camera, Vexel Ultracam LP, still a medium format camera, but at least a camera of new technology. And then they developed their own camera system, which is called Obliques. We have SAP, Sistemas Avanzados y Proyectos. We have the general director of SAP here, Krasimir. You are here, right? No? Oh, he was here in the morning. SAP runs one aircraft and one sensor from Verli Geosystems, the 3DS1. Archeomatica, also one aircraft in Mexico City or Pachuca, and also only small, medium format optic camera. Another company with one aircraft is Siga. This is the ex-director of the INEGI. He bought one of INEGI's aircraft, and they have no camera. Aerofoto, very old Mexican company, but also not well equipped, just one twin-engine Piper Navajo, and Will RC10 analog camera, one of the real old analog cameras. GeoMappa is located in Guadalajara, has one aircraft, Cessna 206, and RC30 Leica camera, film camera. And FISPSA is located in Toluca, one aircraft, and they just got a visual intelligence medium format camera. So it still has to be seen how well this camera works. If we come to our own company, we run 5 aircraft. Okay, thank you. And among others, a Cessna Conquest, which is a turboprop aircraft, very powerful, flies up to 35,000 feet and 300 knots. Cessna 402 with endurance of 8 hours. We put in all our aircraft additional tanks, which is very important to be able to work efficiently. Weather conditions are always a problem, and the infrastructure in Mexico and Central America is relatively sparsely, so you have to have lots of fuel in order to be able to work. We have 3 Cessna 206. This one was brought, by the way, from Germany. I myself worked in Hansa Luftbild for 15 years and had bought this aircraft from Hansa Luftbild. Has new colors now, and it's still running fine and solidly. Another one, this is the latest we bought, also Cessna 206. We are actually the only ones in this area who run 4 large format cameras, all from Vexel Ultracam. We have one Falcon, Ultracam Falcon with 192 megapixels, 2 Ultracam Ds with around 90 megapixels, and one Ultracam Osprey, which is also good for obliques and vertical cameras. Apart from that, we have 2 Nikons, D800, D810, which we use for our LiDAR simultaneously. If you see a sales figure from Vexel Ultracam, you have an idea that in the whole world they sold so far about 300 cameras. And in this space from the Rio Grande, Mexico, all the way down to Panama, there are only 4 large format cameras. So it is not much of high technology for such a big area. But okay, we are proud to have 4 of those. If we come to the LiDAR systems, we as GeoAir have one ALS-60, Cartodata Regal 680, Sixa has a bathymetric LiDAR, which comes originally from Saab in Sweden, and they also have a Regal. Saab has a Regal 780 now, and Sega got this ALS 50 from Inechi. They bought it together with the aircraft. I just want to round up with a project over Panama, and we flew the Panama Canal for the last 5 years. The project, I think, is well known. Panama will enlarge their locks here, the Miraflores locks, and those will be the new locks which can accommodate the super tankers. And so they need regular surveying of the area. These photos show you, for example, the conditions we had to work. We were there twice this year. Weather conditions were extremely difficult. You can see here the ceiling, and you can see the mountains, even over the canal area where there are not high mountains. There's hardly any space left in between, and to take aerial photos is an exciting business in these weather conditions. But the contract was urgent, so we had to fly it urgently. Here you have a satellite image with the weather conditions. You can see what's going on. In this, from here to here, is about the Panama Canal, and the conditions were extremely difficult. To finish it, here you can see the final approach to the airport of Marcos Gelabat. Here's the runway, and the Panama Canal is right below us. To finish, I'll show you a quick video. This is these years flying under these conditions. Somebody took it from the ground, our ground survey crew, and you can see how the aircraft disappears once in a while in the cloud. Of course, in the cloud, we had to refly, but it gives you an idea about the problems in Central America, especially once the best period of time passed. The best period is from December to April, and we had to fly in June, and that gives you some idea. We disappeared into the haze, but in reality, we are here physically and present. So thank you very much for your attention. Appreciate it. Okay.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Wolfgang, for a very informative and detailed story about the aerial photography in Central America and Mexico. Are there any questions from the floor? Andrei Sechin, Rakurs Company. You have Ultracam, Osprey camera, oblique camera. How often do you get orders for this camera? What kind of orders do you get?
It for the cadastre of the state of Mexico, which is the part of, I don't know whether you're familiar with the administrative area of Mexico City, and the state of Mexico is going around in the northern part of Mexico City. We flew part of the state for cadastre. It was, I think, 10 centimeter resolution. Is that right, Mr. Yeah, 10 centimeter. And this also goes into part of Mexico City. I mean, Mexico City is tremendously expanding towards the north. So what we consider as Mexico City is part of Mexico State already. And this was quite an ambitious project, especially because we were flying in the approach of Mexico City Airport with lots of traffic, and our flying altitude was fixed due to the required position for the cadastre. And so we took 127,000 shots. I mean, the Osprey has one vertical camera and 4 obliques. Altogether, it was 127,000 shots. And Wexel, by the way, took these data and made some publications, so you can read it in the Wexel News.
Yeah, have you used the UltraCam map, yes, for processing?
Yeah, we use UltraMap for processing. We do it in-house, but we don't do the mapping. We concentrate on the primary data acquisition because many of our clients are photogrammetric companies, nearly competitors, even the ones who have aircraft contract us. As far as we know, no other company goes outside Mexico. The Mexicans stay in Mexico. They like a lot the chili and the food there, so they don't want to go out of the country. And we cover all Central America and the Caribbean, and we went all the way to Peru and Suriname, Guyana, and
Thank you.
yeah, welcome.
Еще вопрос.
More questions?
Usage of satellite data. How often satellite imagery are used, and what is the competition between aerial survey and remote sensing data? I mean, satellite data. Super very high resolution data.
There's a lot of echoes. I cannot hear you well. Can you repeat?
Using of satellite, high resolution satellite data.
Usage of satellite high resolution data.
Well,
How often they are used?
all the institutions, the Geographic Institute in Central America and Mexico use satellite imagery. They use it up to some 50 centimeters ground resolution. If they need higher precision, like for cadastre or infrastructure planning, then aerial photos come in, I mean, like everywhere else in the world. We, as a private company, we don't use aerial satellite imagery because, well, our sector is the aerial image acquisition and LiDAR data acquisition.
Спасибо.
Thank you. As long as we're already lagging behind, I suggest that you can ask these whatever questions are left later on.